Hi everyone, welcome to tuning in today. We're going to be talking about transition and planning for life beyond high school. Just a quick recap about me. My name is Shannon Lepri. I am a board certified assistant behavior analyst. I have worked at the KidsLink School for since 2013. A little bit about KidsLink is we are a neurobehavioral center and school. We specialize in behavioral and academic severe needs. I know Lori touched base on her presentation about levels of severity of autism. And we kind of err on the level 2s, level 3s students in our population. And we serve students ages 4 through 22. My presentation, we're going to be focusing on our students that are 14 and up in what we call the transition area. All right, let's get started. So today in this presentation, you will be able to learn about PINs and identify them for the individuals and adults you work with, as well as kind of correlate what we've been doing in the school setting and how that translates into the adult world. You'll also learn some successful strategies for transition planning that, again, you can continue on in their adult life and kind of take some tips from us and continue to maintain some skills and also increase these skills that we've been working on for many years in the school systems. Participants will be able to also outline and define at least 2 options for transition age students post-graduation. You guys have way more experience on that as I do, but what I want you to take away from this presentation is looking at it from how we prepare them for these options and why certain options might be better for an individual than others, and looking at how we get to that point and what we do in order to have the higher success rate for that transition to you guys. Okay, quick overview again. We're gonna start with something that I've titled Transition Trail. So where we start, what we're looking at to start with in the school setting, and again, looking forward to you guys in that handoff. Exploring the roads ahead. And this is where I'm going to get more into PINs. That'll be a big topic that is redundant in my presentation. And a person-centered planning, which again, this is something that you guys do. You may not know it, but every single day working with individuals in our field, you are essentially person-centered planning, because as we know, just because you met one individual with autism just means you met one individual with autism. Nothing's cookie cutter. Not every individual is the same, and so on. Preparing for the send-off. Our plan as providers is, backwards planning as our steps that get our students and individuals ready for you. The roadmaps that we use to provide as much education and tools and utilize our resources and your resources for that transition. Crossing that bridge to adult services. Some of the options we will go over, ongoing considerations, and again, some little tools that we might use that you may see when you get a new individual into your facility or home care providing, and definitely touching base on the parent transition of this. And you'll frequently hear me reference the parents throughout this, as this is just as much of a transition period for them as the individual. Okay, so the transition trail, where do we start? In the school system, we are required by law to start transition planning at the age of 14. What this means is even if a student is only 13, but within that school year or their IEP cycle, they turn 14, that IEP, which is an individualized education plan, needs to have the transition section filled out and transition components completed at that age. So 13 to 14 is when we start planning all of this. And we're already thinking about you guys at the age of 13, 14. So real quickly to discuss the IEP, this is for students to hit goals and objectives to obtain milestones throughout their education, their behavior, related services such as speech, occupational therapy, their academic goals and such. What happens with the transition age of 14 is there's a new section that is introduced or is now kind of the focus. So this one section that we're going to be focusing on today, because I don't want to get too much into the actual IEP process. But again, it's kind of our modifications and accommodations to enable our students to be successful in whichever route they're going. In this section, there is post-secondary education and training, competitive integrated employment, and independent living. This period, this is my job actually for our students and families, is to introduce this to families. And we do get conflicting answers from or questions from the families, such as, why are we already starting this? They are only 14 and 13. I don't know what they're going to be doing after school. I don't know if they can get a job. We have no idea what they would be living like, at the age of graduation. A side note is that public school services cease at the age of 22. That doesn't mean that we can't help support through that, but it does mean that some students could be able to graduate at 18 still, and they can be socially graduated. But 22 is when our services cease and we are no longer a part of the team. That's when you guys step in. Again, if they choose to graduate at 18 or they've hit all their credits and they're ready to go into the adult world, then they would go at 18. So these plans, again, if we're going to take the time from 14 to 22, this is only 8 years of preparation. Again, to some, this might seem like a very long time, and it's really not. As I'm sure you all know, as working with some individuals, is that the style of learning or the capacity at which they learn and the rate at which they're learning can significantly affect how many skills transfer into the adult world. So what we try to do at this stage is have an outline of what are the options, first of all, of post-secondary training and education. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go to a trade school? Competitive integrated employment. What are some things that we can work on now to either get them employable or to gain some skills to even see if that's an option? And independent living, there's a plethora of skills to work on. So again, these components just jumpstart our journey into transition. Another thing that happens during this time of when I discuss the IEP and the team in general, the biggest team players are the parents and guardians and the student themselves, because everything is individualized. There's no cookie cutter IEP. Every single thing written in there is solely for that person. Same thing as their teams. Some teams are made up of intervention specialists, general education teachers, related services, and that's again your speech, your occupational therapists, your physical therapists. Sometimes there's lawyers involved, parent advocates who are just a little bit more knowledgeable about the process and can assist parents through this time, and our county services and our state services such as OOD. So county support administrators start coming to these IEPs. And the more comprehensive our team is, the more options and opportunities our individuals will have in the adult world, and kind of set us up for more success. So again, how does this translate to you guys? Well, for example, if they want to go to a trade school or college, we're looking at all of the factors of how to get a student there in this particular section. So what about schooling do they need to continue to work on? So we prioritize goals, even at the age of 14, of something that would get them to a college or to a trade school. Does that mean they need to start following written and verbal directions? How many steps? What types of social cues do they need? What type of academic work needs to be fully completed, all credits, in order to graduate to receive that college diploma? For the employment section, whether or not we're discussing volunteer work as an adult or competitive employment, or supported employment, piece rate work. We have a lot of skills we need to develop in that one small area. So again, we kind of try to throw around our adult options at this age. What do they look like? And what are some goals and activities that we can be doing as a school during these ages that'll transfer and generalize to you and maintain in these individuals' repertoires throughout their adulthood. And that will be beneficial and meaningful, not only to them, but to the employer or to the services that you guys are providing. Same thing with independent living. Some minor examples that I have on here is simple budgeting, hygiene, meal prep. We're talking if they're going to a residential facility where they'll have full-time support, what are the most important key aspects? Most likely communication about being hungry or needing to go to the bathroom. Whereas we go up on the levels is someone needing more assistance wiping, or go on the other end of the lower levels, and this student might just need budgeting help. So our activities would be him learning how to budget, maintaining a bank account, what to do with his paycheck, and how to be responsible for bills and applying for jobs, applying for insurance, applying for credit cards, that sort of thing. So there's a whole range. Again, we could talk forever about the different individual systems, but these skills, really, we are looking for them, one, to be as independent as possible as an adult, and two, to make them an important member of society and be really included in their community. Okay, so skills. Of course, this is the realm for all of us. What type of skills do we have? What skills do we need? And what skills can we build upon? So the core skills that we're already trying to maintain from young age to adult life, they could be very simplistic. However, our jobs as providers, meaning myself and you guys included, is to really capitalize on those skills. How do we expand that skill? How do we transfer that skill onto different things, different jobs, or even different social or leisure skills? So the word of the day might be generalized today. So to generalize these skills across settings, staff and activities, we have to write and practice these goals in a variety of ways. So I have an example here of wiping the table. Not my favorite example, but so an example to generalize this across settings. So you might start off with a student wiping their table or wiping their area from lunch. Okay, expanding upon that could be wiping 3 tables. What we're looking at too is, are they actually wiping the table? Can you see the pressure from their motor skills actually wiping down and getting the grime or dirt or what have you onto the table? What are some things we can do as educators and teachers to make sure that they're actually doing the job well, that they're not feeling forced, or they can still build upon this? We've had students who have a sensitivity to gloves, but they're really great at custodial work. In a lot of places, especially in the food service, you have to wear gloves. So we practice wearing gloves. This is another skill that we're just adding on to the simple task of wiping the table. Or a student could have pressure issues. We can utilize dry erase onto tables and to make sure that they know they need to scrub it in order to see the dry erase marker be moving. Again, these modifications and accommodations and being a little bit creative are stuff that we are looking at you guys to continue when these individuals come to you to again, really ensure that they're doing their jobs, or completing their activities, or even leisure skills, like I said, and that it's not just a quick wipe or it's just a task to stay busy. Like we want them to be engaged in whatever they're doing. Again, with wiping the table, okay, once we get the table, can we start going to windows? what else can we do? Does that skill now, we can add that to our maintenance skills? If so, then we can add this to our skill set that we deliver to the adult provider when they are graduated, and say, like, look at all these core maintenance skills. They wipe tables independently with no support, or they can wipe tables with minimal support. And again, we'll get into those type of details. But again, I know wiping the table might be a silly example, but it's something small that there's so many layers to that we've been working on. Again, in 8 years, you can do so much, starting with wiping the table, and it can end to a whole process. Even something as simple as wiping the table, the visual guides that they might need, or the following written or verbal directions, like which way do they learn best? These are things that we're assessing and we're keeping track of from the age of 14 in order to continue these levels of support to follow them into adulthood. So what do they work best with? What was the quickest way for them to gain this skill and actually, do the skill well? Okay, so exploring the road ahead. In order to make this plan, we need to learn the individual. Can't stress that enough. No plan is going to work for everybody, even if their end goal is the same. The leading up to it is just not for you, not for I, not for Joe, not for Larry, not for Sue. It's all different. So this is where we're going to get into our pins and pulling all of our team resources and really getting into the nitty gritty of planning and really assessing if we know this individual. And if we don't, get to the bottom of it and, again, really outline these skills that we have and capitalize. So the person-centered planning is also something we're going to discuss, and it's just an ongoing theme in whichever realm you're in, wherever you're coming from, schools, home care providers, direct services, paraprofessionals, all of that. Everything we do is person-centered planning, or should be. And it must be utilized to have a successful transition plan. So PINS. PINS stands for preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. So our preferences, I have some small examples here. So working indoors or outdoors, part-time, full-time, alone or with others. These are the types of things we need to look at in order to start developing plans. So we don't want to waste time working on something that is just not going to work in the long run, or is going to be problematic or increase behavior. Interest-wise, we want to take that into consideration. Not everybody might land their dream job, but realistically, there's some interest in everybody's level of work or where they're ending up. So, whether they like cars or how things work, how do we adapt that and build that into their adult life, or what the skills they are? How does that benefit them? Their needs, obviously, this is a huge factor and something that sometimes gets a little bit more attention than the others, and really it should just be just as equal. So do they do better with written or verbal directions? Do they work at a slow pace, fast pace? Hypoallergenic gloves, is that something that's going to be restrictive? We're going to have to look at these things, because if that is something, we might have to pull some different ideas for their end goals if their needs kind of clash with their preferences, right? Staff support. This is huge. As you guys know, some of our students are coming from my students, sorry, are coming from a 1-to-1 ratio. We know that that's not likely in the adult world. So what does that look like post-graduation? We need to start fading on my end before they get to you. Strengths, that's when you are listing, you're kind of categorizing through your preferences and interests. What are those strengths within those? So follows 3-step directives. That's really helpful for you to plan their day. So if you just go on a whim and are continuing to only give them 1-step directives, they're still not learning, and then we're complacent, and then we're kind of putting a bridge or a top on them, like, okay, like pigeonholing almost. Let's continue to build on these skills. They're helpful to others. Great. What type of task can they do where they'll feel and actually, be helpful to others and making a difference? They might initiate tasks, as a lot of you know. Some of our individuals do not like to initiate tasks and are requiring that prompt from staff to initiate a task, even as simple as getting their lunchbox. So identifying these pins really get an idea of an individual and how we're going to make whatever plan we come up with really solid. Going back to the IEP team, the people that are providing the pins are also going to be interlocking with all of those goals and ideas using the pins and ongoing age-appropriate transition assessments. Those can mean some fancy assessment that takes forever to do and a lot of paperwork, or it could be as simple as sitting down with the individual and the mom or dad and discussing these type of things. Like what in your mind is their skills? What are their preferences? What's your interests? Paraprofessionals, our teachers, everybody has some insight to these pins. And of course, the individual is going to be the number one that we go to really gather these. And then what we need to do as a team is provide resources and ideas for these pins. So I just touched base on this a bit, but again, the most influential team members are going to be the parents, guardians, and individuals. And in your realm, it's the same thing. That does not change. That is our constant. We need them to shape how we are teaching, how we are modeling, how we are job coaching. All of those things are only going to be successful if we know the individual and if we know their needs and if we know their strengths. We can build them up. It makes our day, just as more meaningful as theirs. Again, gathering and assessing these. That team that I spoke of before, that again, you guys are simply basically replacing us. But that constant team with county support, state supports, mom and dad, those people are still in the game. You guys are the new players taking over. And it's really cool that you guys can now have the creativity and really get to know the individuals and make that, a major part of their adult life. So the people that, again, make these know them best. And we try to create some documents that, again, we'll go over a little bit later, that just transfer to you guys and at least give you a starting point of what to look for and to get to know them a little bit before you actually get that personal experience. So with the information that we assess for PINs, this is where we get into more detailed individualized goals for the person. And then we start to build our appropriate pathway to you guys. An example of PINs that might be contradictory, but there is a way to go through it. We might have someone who says they want to be a gardener. They love gardening. They love landscaping. They want to be a landscaper. All right, well, let's look into what you need to do to be a gardener. Or they might have something in their needs that says they can't be in the heat too long because of a medical condition. They're sensitive to certain chemicals. They like to work inside. And they prefer to work with others than versus themselves. Well, you have a few things going on here. When you think of landscaping and gardening, immediately you're going outside. And if you're still living in Ohio or maybe a warmer climate and you're in the summertime, the individual, it's not going to jive well, right? So what areas can we look at? Instead of an outside garden, let's look at places and needs of a facility that has a greenhouse, or a place like Home Depot or something like that. And again, these are just creative ideas that you think of. Okay, so if their heart's set on gardening, what can we do to make that happen that still aligns with their PINs? These PINs are the foundation of all of our planning and should continue on throughout their lives. PINs can change, of course. I mean, you think about your own pathway. None of our pathways were the same. I know I changed majors and kind of maybe went backwards on a couple of my plans, and that happens, and we have to be prepared for that. But continuing to assess the PINs, again, just because we assess them in school and then we're like, hey guys, this is their pins at age 22. You guys know just as well as we do, that may change. At least we have a starting point, and again, a foundation. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I'm a little ahead. So guiding that strategic planning and process, they're likely to stick with the individuals for many, many years. Remember, parents as partners, they are going to be most familiar with the pins of their son or daughter. So if you're not sure, ask. I've seen some home communication logs and home notes and such that you guys pass back and forth. That's a great time to be like, hey, I noticed so-and-so didn't seem very interested in this task. What are some tasks they may have done in the past that they seem to enjoy or were really good at? If it's not already available to you, feel free to ask. They want you to know these things about their son or daughter to make a more personal experience and for you to learn the individual. And again, for you as well. Their general outlook on the world, can help you be a better professional in your right is, not just assuming that they like to do something or just because they're engaging in a certain behavior that they should be continuing to engage in that behavior instead of switching it around and getting them engaged in something else so that behavior is not occurring and they're actually engaged in a meaningful task. Again, I can't stress it enough, the successful relationship and programming that the pins can offer you. So person-centered planning. The definition is a process for selecting and organizing the services and supports that a person with a disability may need to live in the community, directed by person who is receiving the supports. Again, all individual parents, guardians, we are the additional team members. Speaking of you and I, we are the support, but we're not the people that are going to continue on or really mold this. We are the help. We are creating support systems for our parents and individuals. So any and all of those modifications, accommodations, the pins should be familiar to all those team members. So don't be afraid to ask. Again, it could be your supervisor that we have provided all the programming and documentation and tips and tricks, and it hasn't trickled down to you yet. So speak up if you're if you're feeling like you don't know a person or they're not really engaging in something, or you're kind of at a loss of what to do for the day, depending on where you work. Obviously, I know that there's a few different receiving ends of information that I'm talking to right now. No adult has the same path. So everything we do, regardless of your job title, if you're listening to this presentation, everything that we should do on our daily basis for these adults, for these individuals, should be person-centered. Again, that same path doesn't work for everybody, even if the goal is the same. If both goals are college for two people, their paths are not going to be the same, and we know that. So continue that in adulthood. It's just always person-centered planning for the highest rate of success. Okay, so preparing for send-off. Some strategies for success we're going to go over is a backward planning model and a roadmap. Backwards planning, as simple as I can say it, is just starting where you want to end up. Again, going back to the beginning of the presentation, when I'm discussing the components of the transition section of the IEP, this backwards planning model is the same thing. What we're doing is having our end goal. So looking at graduation, looking at after 22, looking at what's occurring with you and your jobs, or your job as, again, either a paraprofessional, a home care provider, direct service provider. What does it look like for you, and how are we going to backwards plan and to make them successful within that transition? And again, are they going to competitive employment? Or where do they see themselves? We have students who right now would love to be a barista, and that is their main end goal at 22. That's what they want. what are the skills that they need to do? What kind of activities can we get them doing right now in high school to get them to get at that point? That could be job shadowing, that can be actually going to a Starbucks, filling out an application, in volunteering at local coffee shops and documenting their experiences, and then again coming back in and assessing, did you actually like that? Is that still something that we want to plan on working on? Backwards planning has a lot to do with team contribution and effort. And things to consider on that note is that some teams are simply more successful because of open and effective communication, which again is something we strive for. Some teams have more access to resources, more funding, and generally just more involved people. As unfortunate as it's reality is, some people are just more knowledgeable, so they might get a few more resources in one place than the other. But what we try to do is continue to share, and continue to try to cross-train in order to have that successful transition. The milestones that we think about when we're backwards planning, transportation is a huge one. Are they going to be an individual that is driving legally, that needs their driver's license, that has to have some modifications to pass their driving test? Well, we can work on that at school, to help pass the test. But is that going to transfer? Are they going to continue to need support? And what does that look like? Some of our students are learning how to use Uber and Lyft on their smartphones. And some of our students are simply still needing one-to-one support to get on and off the bus safely. I think the transportation one is something huge for, as I said, the student that may still continue to need at the age of 20, 21, 22 to need support to safely get off the bus. You might see that as a staff fading, or instead of a physical prompt, we're doing more gestural prompts. How can you continue that learning? Then if our bridging point, if we say, hey, Tony over here has been so successful now, staff is 5 feet away from them and they're getting on and off the bus the same, they still need an eye on them for safety reasons. You, as you take them over, you might be like, let's start working on 10 feet and so on. So again, we don't want these skills that we've been working on to just stop at age 22. That's not the point. But what we do want, you guys, is to continue to maintain those skills, but then also make them more meaningful to what their world looks like now. We can do some research and talk with you guys and ask about what their day is going to look like and try to build our school schedule that way and routine, but it's not going to be the same as their everyday routine once it's changed. So that's when you guys come in and take over those roles of how can we make them as independent as possible, but still provide the support that they need to be successful in everyday skills. Again, transportation is something so small, but yet can have a huge effect on their adult life. I have one actual story that happened last year. We had an individual, everything was planned out perfectly, or so we thought. We found an adult day program for him. Transportation was locked in, meaning that they were able to pick him up and drop him off. Well, when it got down to the nitty-gritty, I think he was 1 week away from transitioning fully to this program. When transportation came up again, they asked if he was okay to be dropped off at the apartment complex that his dad lived in. And we stepped in and said, oh, well, no, he would need a support staff to walk him to the door to ensure safety. That opened up a can of worms and set us back. And we had about, I think, a week or two to scramble to figure out how to get the pieces linked up. The reason for this is initially we had said, yes, they do great in the van, drop off, or come in, drop off. However, this student exhibited some silly behavior. He might be susceptible to stranger danger, like letting someone in the house or walking to the restaurant downstairs of the apartment complex rather than going in the home. So the laws of this adult program, they were not allowed to have their paraprofessionals walk him up, or not paraprofessionals, sorry, their direct service staff go with him because they had other students in the van. So we ended up working it out, but it's just these small details that, oh, we could have worked on that while we were planning. We should have asked more detailed questions and shown more of the needs of the student. Again, this, a reminder that the school services cease at age 22. They are no longer available for training or transitioning. So roadmaps is a frequent term that that we use when we're planning. So again, we have that backwards planning model. But what we need to get to that end point is a roadmap. So these are kind of like your steps needed to get from that point A to point B. Reaching smaller goals. Again, this is in addition to the IEPs that we're doing, the backwards planning tools, the many checklists that we do to ensure this. These roadmaps are what do we need to do as a team to get them to this point. This can be simple as meeting lists, like we are quarterly going to meet for to ensure that all the county processes are in order. At the end of the roadmap, you're going to see a lot of you guys. You're going to see touring day programs or touring volunteer placements within their community. It basically outlines the needed items to be as prepared as possible. Again, these things might sound redundant in that it's similar information, but that is the point, is all this similar information has so many different layers and so many different supports and necessities in order to work. We need a well-oiled machine to transfer to you guys and have you guys just get the ball rolling and just roll with it and keep going. You know, kind of like the snowball effect. Like we want you guys to keep going bigger and better. And you know, how can we build this road to success? So crossing the bridge to adult services. Oh, just a quick point about roadmaps they do keep everybody kind of accountable for what that team member is responsible for. So their IS might be responsible for creating documents to send over. The parent might be responsible for checking off all of the wants and needs category, and a transition person might be responsible for scheduling those shadowing opportunities in that cross training, which is not always an option, and we'll get to that soon. So options after graduation, our hopes as school services, helpful tools, and a few scenarios. So this is not an exclusive list, but just touching base, you guys know about these way better than I do, but I'll touch base on a few. So some of our individuals will be going to an adult rehabilitation place or day program. So again, we're no longer referring to these as workshops. A lot of the ones that I have toured or been in connection with, they do a lot of daily activities that are similar to certain school activities. Some have community outings. It might just be once or twice a week. High staff to student ratio is something that I barely touch base on because working at KidsLink, which is a unique and private school, we are used to a lower staff to student ratio. It's very one-to-one and or small group, which you guys know is not the case at all in adult services. Some may still have some piece rate pay as one of their daily activities. Group home, assisted living, again, living on their own with support. They might be employed, requires assistance though with daily living tasks. They just might need somebody to check in on them every so often or even daily, but it's not that overwhelming staff support. Parents in HPC, again, this person might be staying at home per the request of the parents, and the parents are kind of managing the schedule. A home care provider could be a part of this. If they're hired, you know, through the parent. The hybrid HPC model is a flexible path, but it's not always easy to navigate. This requires, again, the parent being prepared to take over all of the management of what a school might be doing for them currently, as in community outings or what an adult day program might look like. They would be responsible for all of the activities throughout the day, again, scheduling outings, play dates. If their home care provider gets sick or quits, they are the sole responsible ones in this case. But but some parents choose this path because they find it's just more suitable for them to take over the reins instead of having somebody else dictate their son or daughter's schedule. Employment. These are for some of our kiddos that, again, wide range. We can go anywhere from volunteer work to part or full-time jobs, and they could be competitively employed, and they can still be employed and go to, you know, certain day programs or whatnot. The full-time jobs could be supported or linked from OOD, so they're still getting some services. College, there's obviously the traditional track that we don't really need to go over. There are new functional routes that have some additional support. They're not always ending in actual degrees. They give the full college experience, and again, have some like mentorship programs and activities, but in a college living facility. So residential, again, these could be private or state placements, probably the most restrictive in some cases, meaning they do have full staff support around the clock, but maybe not going out into the community or engaging in as many daily living activities. So our goal, again, is to continue those routines and expectations that these individuals thrive on, again, throughout your life. As an adult, think about yourself, think about how you do your everyday responsibilities and your routines. We need to keep that up. You guys need to keep that up. I know you guys do. But really, we're attempting to learn what it looks like without us and focus on their new environments, just as we want you guys to take away from this is focusing on, okay, here's some skills that were built. How do we continue with these? How do we make them better? What do you guys need to know? This is something that we're gonna try to ask you guys as many questions if we get the opportunity to talk with you before we overlap. How can you assist in their success? This is something you should be asking yourself every day. The cross-training, touching base really quickly, it's not always an option, unfortunately. Some placements are very happy for us to have a few months, even a few weeks of just having our staff come in with our individual to get to know how we interact, and then, you know, kind of showing you guys and modeling how do they learn best, or how do they interact best with staff. So then you guys can have some more like actual experience rather than just reading through documents. Some places are just not for it, and they are like, okay, at the age of 22, they are graduated, we take them over, thanks for your time, bye-bye. We can't do much in that case, but again, you can ask questions, you can communicate with the families, you can communicate with your supervisors. So just small considerations is what's available in their county specifically we have to look at. Again, I know you guys have different rules, what you can and cannot do. We are sensitive to that, and we do understand that we have different leeways and different ways of doing things because of being a school versus an adult care provider. Again, referring back to some students getting different funding, do we need more funding for transportation if they need that extra person, that support person to ride the van with them? Where do those funds come from? That's also something that we have to add in. Transportation, we don't have to talk about that anymore. Taking over support, managing, planning, and how and when will these changes occur? How much time do we have? Again, that's all of the points leading up to you. And again, we just want you guys to take what you have and roll with it and continue to ask questions. Some helpful tools that we do utilize and that we attempting as KidsLink are providing for our graduating students are their daily scheduling routines and outlines. Again, these might look similar to exactly what you guys are doing, not exactly, but as close as we can get, as some things that you're doing in adult services. So again, we have the student learning or individual learning what their day is going to look like, and we try our best to mirror that to get some of the kinks out so they're as successful as they can be for you. Video models are a big thing in our school that we like to do in the community or at school. Again, just providing that for you and maybe putting them in their career portfolio. So videos of them actually engaging in a task, having a list of those maintenance tasks and some things that they're working on or some things that they are amazing, they're doing well at, they enjoy doing. here you go. Summaries of progress is something that we do as districts all around. So that should be something that could be accessible to you. Levels of reinforcement and what their reinforcement is and how do they access it, what do they like. Again, I know you guys have different rules, but it's still good to know some reinforcing items or reinforcing activities or communication that the individual needs. Again, as much open discussions with the team as you can have, especially the parents. Really quickly, I'll go over one scenario. So Tommy lives at home, high energy. He exhibits problematic behavior such as hair pulling, throwing, when he's not engaged or simply bored. He does have some volunteer work. He can only work for about 2 to 3 hours on a good day per shift. He does not do well with shared attention, meaning that if he is with another individual and a staff member is talking to him, he is just not a happy camper. He loves going out into the community to walk around stores. He is nonverbal and needs support to travel, complete everyday tasks, requires toileting assistance. All routines are located on his device. Video models of common tasks have been recorded. Mom and transition team felt that the adult programs they toured in his area had too much downtime, meaning behavior is going to occur. Most likely that the staff to student ratio was too high and Tommy is just not going to thrive in that type of environment. And they didn't spend time in the community, and that is Mom and Tommy's biggest enjoyment. School was able to assist in cold calling some local businesses and look for volunteer work. So what option's best for him? At the end of the day, the parents chose the parents in managing HPC, which means a home care provider comes in several times. Mom manages all activities. You know, whether you disagree or not, the route that the parents or the transition team has come up with, we have to respect it and work from it and still provide ideas and resources for the team, which is why it looks like the school in this case pulled some volunteer opportunities to, again, have that kind of set up before Mom takes over. So a volunteer placement that we set up for Mom might not stay for 2 years, 5 years, whatnot, or it could be a lifetime thing. We don't know, but giving the reins to Mom, and then Mom has to retrain the HPC. So again, this way Tommy has free range to explore the community and activities in surrounding areas. He has one-to-one attention for most of the day. It's a lot of responsibility for Mom and the home care provider, but the benefits outweigh the work for Tommy specifically. Not every student or not every individual is going to be like this. And at the end of the day, they have video models and schedules. So if that home care provider is not available, somebody else can step in. Or if Mom chooses to no longer do this and go to an adult program, she has those for her. And again, the home care provider has that flexibility to offer ideas and outings and increase the volunteer work if they find it suitable, or if Tommy kind of goes through a phase where he goes, you know what, I'm bored of going into the community. I want to work 5 days a week. So they can always switch it. And again, being that staff person, something you need to look out for and communicate with parents. So scenario number 2, Sarah is very social. She loves to paint and draw. Schedule consists of group work, independent work, gym class, art class, cooking. She's socially graduated. So no longer working on academics. She lives in a supported facility with 2 other adults, works at a pizza shop on the weekends with her job coach. She is a great self-advocate. She's independent, but does need monitoring for safety and budgeting. Her facility staff does this for her after school hours. So currently she's in school. When she goes home, they work on this type of stuff with her. Team finds an adult day program that's similarly structured to her school day currently. Bonus and is ideal. School staff is able to visit the program prior to graduation and model interactions, highlight Sarah's talents, and initiate new friendships. So of course, in this case, it was one of those super wins. We already had a schedule that was very similar to the day program. So there was that ease of transition. We were also able to visit that program with Sarah to ask questions, explore the environments, and find new friends. We were also able to shape Sarah's communication by asking new staff members what they like to do, or showing her repertoire of all these all of her artworks and some of her routines that she's learned in gym class. She continued to be able to be around peers and adults, draw and paint, and engage in those daily activities that she was used to and she was successful in. And in this case, she was also able to continue her part-time job at the pizza shop on the weekends and maintain the support she needed at home. So Sarah's case is a win-win. That's a great scenario. We don't always see that. Transition for the parents is our last and final topic. It is so important to recognize that this is not only a transition period for the individuals or adults who we're discussing. These parents may most likely have had, especially if they're going into an adult day program, may have had the same support staff for 18 to 20 years. I'm sorry, more like 18. But some of them who have been in private, I've known some students who have come as early as 18 months. So 18 months to 22 years in, with that type of support is huge. To feel like they're losing that. I mean, that's not what we want. And we don't want them to think, oh, the end is 22. Absolutely not. We want them to be excited about this period. And they're going to thrive as an adult. And this is what this adult program or these home care providers, they have the same ideas in mind. They want our individuals to be a productive member of society. They want them to be included in their communities, meaning you guys, just as much as they see their support staff right now. And again, their parents are going to be the voices for majority of the individuals and adults that you guys are going to see. So get to know them, get to know their pins, and it'll just be helpful for everybody all around. So the parents are our allies and the advocates. They've had so many years of planning. Again, when we're starting at 13, 14, it's not always going to be perfect, but they do have knowledge of what it looks like in the adult world, but it's scary. It's a scary time. So be sensitive to that factor. If maybe they're confused or they're demanding something, get to the bottom of it and figure out how can you guys work as a team? Because at the end of the day, again, you guys are the newest team members. You guys are now a core asset to the team. You guys are their voice during the day. You guys are their advocates to learn more, to continue to learn more, to be engaged. And again, if you're a job coach or if you're just doing some volunteer work, you are providing that training to have meaningful outcomes. So the outcomes are the most important, right, for everybody, whether that be with work or just daily activities. So create and maintain that open dialogue to increase effort of the whole team. Again, if you're seeing that maybe the student or individual isn't engaged at all, what can we do to make them more engaged? Did they like this activity? Hey, so-and-so who's ever in charge of your daily activities, can we put in more of this? And again, keeping that open dialogue with your supervisors and parents is just huge. Find out your students' pins. Again, it's just going to be so beneficial to you and the adult. If you have the opportunity, please ask the school services anything that you can think of when you have them, even if it's this like a meet and greet, hello, go in there with some questions that you might have. Have like a bank of questions that you could ask or give to your supervisor when they're doing like an intake. Remember, parents as partners. As we fade, you are now the key members. We look forward to building on these relationships and really focusing on easing this transition for everybody involved. My corny saying of the day, teamwork makes the dream work. So you yourselves can continue to build these roadmaps, short and long. Get creative in the daily living activities. Don't accept complacency. Just because you see somebody engaging in some type of behavior every day does not mean that we should just accept that. We need to always be looking towards a bigger and better goal and how we can provide the services and supports to initiate and to develop those skills. Learn and engage with PINs. And the bigger the team effort, the more success. And all plans, regardless, and all activities you are doing should all be person-centered. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I hope you guys took home some valuable information, and we so appreciate all of the work that you do with these adults.